And we are recording episode next of Punch Up. I think your jacket fell so perfectly on that timing too.
I recovered it.
Welcome, Sammy Anzer, to the pod. Thank you so much for being here, fam.
What a pleasure. What an honor.
Oh my God. You were probably, besides Mitch Jones, like the other most like name-dropped person that people have brought up in interviews, which has been really cool.
Oh, cool.
Something that's been fun to kind of ask people is like, who do you see as like, you know, a mentor, inspiration, just like an icon in the scene, and or like who's just a class act that you like admire and you're like always brought up in that
That's
context.
Crazy. No one's ever said that to me. I just think that all the time.
Well, you are. It shows. It is apparent. Sammy, I mean, like, you've done so much. You're doing a really cool, like, art project with, I think, the Rhino Art District grant, which is amazing, at Denver Art Museum. It's Comedians Talk Art, right? And then you've just been seen, like, all over. I mean, you've been, like, SiriusXM. You've, like, written for, like, Kevin Hart's network. You've, like... I mean, literally, your, like, first album was, like, topping the charts on iTunes. So, like, just on, as both, like, kind of an objective level within the scene and then also just, like, personally, like, big fan, incredible work. Well done. Thank you so much for joining me at this, like, somewhat noisy coffee shop for this pod. I love
the coffee. Love the spiced monkey cake or whatever it's called.
Yeah, though, and, like, I like that you were, like, toasted. And he was like, this one toasted. Like... We got our toasty buns. I guess I'll start out by just asking you what I ask everybody on the pod, which is like, what does punching up mean to you?
I mean, I like the idea of always making a joke better, right? Making it punchier, punch it up. I always think of that. That's like there's like an opportunity to make everything better. That's one thing I love about comedy is like every time you think you're done with the joke, it's like a secret boss reveals itself, and it's like, oh. You know, really this joke can be made more thoughtful, more complex, more nuanced, more whatever by punching up. And also, like, when you told me the idea of the podcast of, like, punching up, it's something that I feel conflict over. I'm not sure how much I agree with the hierarchical idea of punching up.
Interesting. Can you talk more on that?
With my comedy... I specifically, I often joke about race, I joke about women, I joke about people who are neurodivergent. I have all those types of jokes. And my thesis behind that is that humor is the thing that unites us. The idea is that we should all be laughing at the same table. And to acknowledge someone as below you on a hierarchical scale removes their seat from the table and says, you are not equal to us. I understand the rationale and the motivation and the push behind putting these guardrails in comedy around saying, hey, you should only be punching up. Like, if you're like a straight white rich dude, you shouldn't be making fun of like poor black people or something like that, right? Because that's how our society is structured, and that is a fact. There are hierarchies within our society for that. However, I think the audience is always smart enough to know when a joke is in bad taste and not. And I should just hope that we all write and create comedy that inspires togetherness and inclusion while joking on each other, as opposed at the direct expense of someone, whether they be above us or below us on socioeconomic status in late-stage capitalism in America.
Right, like kind of all of the iterations of what that can mean with your identity. Man, that's so great. I really resonate with a piece of what you said as well, where you're like, when you kind of like refuse to kind of like punch with, you know, those people. You immediately like kind of disempower them.
You're othering them.
Right? And like that was such that really hit a chord for me. One of the first times that I was on a roast battle, and like no shade whatsoever to roast battle scene. Love y'all, love roast battle scene, like very much like mad respect, right? But it was interesting. I went up and I kind of was like hoping the like people would roast me more, and like they just kind of wouldn't. Like it was odd. Like they like very much like there was no joke behind it. They literally were just like, you
Weird
look
shit.
dumb, this is dumb. And I was like, you can kind of tell me that in a joke, you know what I mean? But like I was like wanting it, and it very much just felt like being like a kid on the playground and not having anybody kick you the ball.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't care if I fall over playing, like I want you to kick me the ball. Like that's the like that's how we are equals.
That's the exact sentiment I'm talking about.
So like I really like, and like that was really impactful for me to be like, how can I like create or foster a better sense of like rapport or community with these people so that I can like be kicked the ball, you know, and be able to like to have people be willing to play with me. When I think that it's something I want to kind of like pivot to a little bit is like, it's so interesting. You have some of my favorite content, like genuinely, some of your reels are like reels that I'll go to on a bad day. And like your tree bit, I go to on a bad day. Like I won't divulge it here, but y'all like please look up Sammy on Instagram. It's so funny. It's funny every time I watch it. I like walk around on like a day and I'll just be like, that's a regular tree. Like I will like look. Yep, regular tree. I think it's fascinating in the work that I've seen you do. You do a lot of like kind of object content, and like if that makes sense, like moreover like you're kind of like adding personality to inanimate objects, or you're making observational commentary on those objects. Tree bit is an example. You have a wonderful bit about the Holiday Inn flag. Oh my god, it kills me every time. And I guess, you know, it's fun to kind of hear you have a bit more of a say on like, oh, when we're making jokes about people, to not try to punch down, regardless of like status, position, whatever.
No, punch across.
Punch across.
Sit at the table and punch right across.
So it's interesting to hear you have like kind of that stronger feeling of like not punching down on people, and then also the content I know of your work is almost, it doesn't even have to necessarily do with people until you're making a real statement about you know, like race or status. So like I think that you like hit those punches really heavy when you're approaching work about people or about a sensitive topic, like just like, you know, like being like racially profiled or like whatever. How do you go about making those bits? Do you kind of I've heard two kind of methods, and I know that there are certainly an infinite number, but often people will either be like, I figure out what I want to say, which is like, this specific thing is bullshit or whatever, and then I figure out a joke around it, or then kind of the reverse is like, I have a punchline or I have a funny story, and so then I try to kind of wrap that into an allegory.
No, I think I always go, it could go either ways. That's true for all comedians, but I really like starting at a profound truth, or a truth that feels profound to me, because I feel once I know I'm saying the truth, I'll never get tired of saying the truth. I'll never not believe in the truth. I'll always be like people ask me like, who's your favorite comedian? It's like, it's me, motherfucker. Of course. I say the things I want to say that I feel need to be said, right? So it's like, I would never, like, I don't do a bit because like it does well or something like that. Like I do it because it feels true. Like I have this bit I posted about how like, you know, I saw a guy driving around and he had 4 really big American flags. And if you have 4 really big American flags on your truck, it's exactly the same as having 1 regular size Confederate flag. And I do that joke in front of military audiences. I do it in all white rooms. I go to fucking Nebraska and I do that joke. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna die for this truth. You can fight me in the parking lot after the show if you want. I don't care. Right? And because I know that I'm starting at a truth, it gives me the confidence to like say it. And I think that I trust that the audience is smart enough to get that truth. And it has to be interesting enough for them to like wanna like hold on to, right? So if you start with like a basic truth, like, man, Mexicans love rice, right? It's like, okay, like we've heard that doesn't do anything, we don't care. Yeah, they probably do, it doesn't matter. But it's like what at least I'm trying to do when I do it is I'm trying to find the depth of some other person's experience or humanity, or do it and find some commonality and create a thread and show it to the audience and be like, isn't this true? And I want them to go, yeah, you're right, that is true. And even if we didn't want to laugh at it, we're laughing at it right now.
Man, that was so beautifully put. I want to kind of direct into talking about the audience a little bit. You, in just this conversation alone, have said like multiple times that you really trust the audience to get it. You're really like kind of putting forth in some ways like a lot of surprising expectations that I don't necessarily hear from other comedians, which is really cool.
Yes.
And also it's fascinating because something that you've been brought up on this pod and other episodes for is your phenomenal handling of hecklers. And so while you are so clearly exuding an affection for the audience in your work, and you are kind of vocally telling me that you're going in with this other sense of like trust for them, when you're confronted with a situation, you handle it both like gracefully and with grace, and like also very bluntly. Can you talk about like when you're handling hecklers, what's kind of going through your head? How are you kind of navigating that? Because what you do seems masterful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that, I mean, it really, so my background is I'm a high school teacher. And I taught high school English, and I started teaching in Memphis, Tennessee, which has some of the worst schools in the country, period. We're talking about 10th graders on a second grade reading level. We're talking about kids sticking each other up with guns outside the school after class, like the worst, right? And I came in there, and it just became very apparent that in order for me to be a good teacher, I had to, my will to care for them had to be stronger than their will to check out and not learn.
Wow.
And every day it was a battle of wills. And they would test my preparedness, they would test my knowledge, they would test my patience, they would test my care and my love. And every day I won. I won every day. Because that's what I believe in. Like, they thought they couldn't do it. They thought this wasn't valuable to them. They thought they didn't care. And I go, no, this is important, and you should care, and you're gonna be great. And I don't care what you say, right? And that's the belief, the same thing that I come for when I handle the audience. So I would have kids who would get up in my face and like, they're bigger than me and they're like, step to me, like they're about to fight me. And I'm like, I wish you would. Go ahead. And like, when they see, and like when people see that your resolve is that strong, that's when you get respect. And that's the same way I treat the audience, is that like, yo, we have a chance to make something beautiful, to think, to laugh together, have a story to tell you about my life. You know, like, we're gonna do these great things together. And if you fuck with me, I'm gonna take care of you. Straight up. I'm not gonna let, like just like I would tell those students, there was a phrase my students used to repeat. It was crazy to see. But I would have a disruptive student who like would put their head down or like would insist on disrupting the class. And I'll go, you get 2 shots, right? I'll tell you once, and if you disrupt my learning environment, I will remove it. And I had students repeating it, and every kid knew that. And that's the way I got down. And it's like, no, I have something, we're gonna do something special here tonight. We're gonna put on a show. And if you disrupt that, I'm gonna take care of you. Straight up.
That's so good. That gives such it's giving such like like mom from New York being like, you will not mess up this holiday. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna act right. It's fucking Christmas.
I'm a product of my mom from New York, so yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit, as well as like, because you're from Bronx area? No,
I'm from Queens.
Queens. Okay,
Yeah.
And right, did that influence your comedy? Like, when did you kind of start then your comedy journey, and like, was New York a big influence?
My comedy journey was in elementary. I started my comedy journey as a class clown at public school 220. And yeah, it became like apparent to me that like words were a kind of magic, and like I could use them to get out of trouble. Like making a girl laugh was like my favorite thing, and like making my friends laugh and laughing with my friends was like my favorite thing in the world. And that's the reason why I became a comedian, and I'm a comedian today, is because I want to live in that moment of like being 16, hanging out in the basement, all your friends cracking jokes, telling stories about last night. Like that's what stand-up comedy is to me. It's like we're 16, we're back in the basement, we're joking on each other, we're telling stories, and instead of the audience is just one of the friends hanging out there.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I think that also is such a great like review of what it is like to sit in at your show. I feel like everyone just feels like they like simultaneously are like in a front row seat, but also like wishes that they actually were, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like it's like really neat to like see people lean into that environment, or like see people like quite literally take seats closer to the front when you're on stage, because you're exuding this level of like almost like comfort, if that makes sense, while still like addressing really uncomfortable things. Man, two things that you said in that as well were really impactful. Big love for Mo Alexander. He has like a quote really similar to what you said, where you're like, words were kind of magic. I figured it out in school, kind of was able to then, find the power of like persuasion through that as well. And I always thought that was like really intriguing, because I did not necessarily grow up as the class clown. I was not the funny kid. I was like the punching bag and just was the butt of the joke forever, and like which was like a great experience, right? Great practice. And is also a fun, we love a character arc. But that was really good. And then just right, coming up kind of as a class clown, coming up in that environment, and then like, oh man, you had one other thing. Oh yeah, it was you're like just hanging out, like in being with my friends, having this like very almost innocent isn't quite the right word, but close enough. This like really pure sense of joy, yeah. And I remember I got to see Wu-Tang at Red Rocks, and they were playing with the Colorado Symphony Orchestra, which was just so cool. And they put on, they like came on stage and they were like, when we were teenagers, we used to like smoke weed and laugh and rap and watch kung fu movies, and so that's what we're gonna do with y'all tonight. And they like put on a kung fu movie, and they would just like play they like soundtracked the whole movie basically. It was so cool. And everyone's smoking mad weed in the audience because it's Red Rocks, and it was just so lovely. And I was like, wow, like to be able to take that very specific vibe and just like expand it so exponentially to like 1,000+ people was like really mystifying to see, and like what a cool artful thing. So like I love that you're like,
we're trying to create the world that we want to live in, right? Like that's the whole point. It's like every time, like that's what reminds me, is like that's my purpose, is that like I want people to feel like they're just kicking it on the couch and we're all just talking shit.
I love that. What else do we want? You are seemingly very prolific, and you have a lot of content that I've seen you do that's really varied. Like it's like rare that I get to. It's like interesting, because a lot of times you'll hear comedians go up and kind of do the same bits over and over. And granted, like the audience is different, it makes sense. But like almost every time I see you, I feel like I'm seeing different content. What are your writing habits like? What's your kind of like practice of creating new content or staying fresh with your content?
That's a good question. I think I always compare it to painting, even though I've never painted anything. But it's just like the thing I think about is that I think of like your showcase set as like, imagine like a big oil painting canvas piece that you're refining, and you're putting that little tree in there, and you're honing in on it, and you're being polished and that. And then just as like an artist, like you see stuff and someone has an interesting look and you want to sketch it. Or you like look at that across the hall and you see a fire extinguisher and you're like, I wonder if I could match the texture on it, and you sketch that. And I think that you need both in order to be like a strong stand-up comedian. You need to be continually refining the stuff that works, and you need to play around and sketch and like just do whatever with anything. And I think the thing that helps me the most is that I don't try and make my sketches good. And when I say sketches, I mean ideas, right? I don't try to make my ideas good. I just understand that stand-up comedy and comedy is the vehicle through which I process the world. Meaning, you know, something will happen, I'll be like, what's funny about this? And I'll just like write it down, right? Like, what's funny about monkey bread, right? And I'll just write that down. And I understand that doesn't have to be good. It's just me trying it. And then I have those like 10 thoughts there or whatever that I wrote down. And I just go, which one do I like the most? And I trust that like if I like it and I'm interested in it and I want to work on it, that the audience will too. And sometimes it just doesn't work. And then you just put it back. And then you just go, that sucks.
That's so beautiful. That was such a lovely explanation of like kind of following your like comedic intuition as well, because like, yeah, and what a lovely practice to develop. I think that something that I didn't realize when I first started trying to do comedy was like, I started just writing everything down. I didn't do open mics for a while because I had barely dipped a toe into an open mic, and then we had a plague, and I was like, well, I'm gonna just write everything down that I think is funny, but I don't understand why any of this is funny, and is it even funny? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was very full of self-doubt.
It's a superhero origin story, right?
I'm like, you know, super into that practice still, right? I think that it's like critically important, and now I think I realize it as like, you know, getting in the practice of noticing funny things, getting in the practice and like getting the development of my own sense of humor. And then as I've like kind of been grown in it, it's been like, okay, well now how can I, you know, either throw something that's funny kind of at this concept, or then explore it more deeply to be able to give life to that, right?
Beautiful.
And you can do that structurally, you can do that super experimentally, like sometimes you just have to like go up on a mic and interact with somebody to give you another piece of that prompt, right? But yeah, no, I really resonate with the way that you were like talking about, yeah, just being able to write it down and notice that it's funny, and giving yourself permission that it doesn't have to be good.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for people's like writing obstacle, is they think it has to be good. And I'm like, so much of stand-up comedy is like embracing the suck. Embrace that you're not going to be good when you start. There's freedom in it. Embrace that you're going to continually get humbled by audiences no matter where you are, as long as you're trying new things. Like, there's freedom. Like, embrace the fact that not everything you write is going to be good, and then you can write what you want.
I love that. I think that that's so beautiful. There is such a freedom in that. For me, that also came with like kind of back to that theme of trust in the audience. I realized I had to really trust the audience to also let me know what was funny, as like they are like my partner in this. And like it was very freeing, oddly, to then kind of come into my more like comedy identity by realizing like, oh, I don't know what's funny. And like, that's okay. It's almost critically important that I like maintain that being true and okay, where I can, you know, try to practice noticing what's funny or developing my sense of humor, but then also like recognizing that like I am not the all-knowing like comedy monster. You know what I mean? Like, that is not a thing. That is not my point in this world, but it is part of my purpose to then also be able to trust other people in letting me know like what is an easier way to receive this as joyful.
Yes. Yeah. I think I'm so impressed that you learned that like so soon on, because I think like most people in their pride, they'll be obstinate and they'll be like, oh, you guys are dumb, you guys don't get it. It's like, no, motherfucker, your job is to reach people. You have to reach them. How are you reaching them? Make it better, make it tighter, make it more artful, make it more thoughtful. Reach them. The people want to be reached. You have to be capable of reaching. That's your job.
That's so good. That's such a like. You just like put words to something that like has been harboring in myself for a long time.
Do it, bro.
I guess like yeah, the next kind of piece of that I think would build on this is also like, you know, have you, I'm sure yes, but like have you had the experience of needing to quote unquote like punch up a joke, make it better, make it more absorbable, make it less offensive, you know, whatever, and what was that like for you? What was that process? What was that experience? How did you like navigate it?
Yeah. I mean, there's different comedians with different approaches, and for me, I'm always attracted to like more difficult topics, like things that are meatier, things like, you know, like systemic racism and addiction and societal problems and corporate greed. And for me, the challenge is always that. It's how do I make this palatable? My favorite rapper has like a quote that I live my life by is like Nipsey Hussle. And he says, you gotta hide the medicine in the candy. Yeah. And that's what it is that most people want to be entertained in this country than they want to be taught. So if I'm gonna have my time up there with them, I want it to be purposeful. I want to leave people with an idea, and I want them to be entertained, right? So it's like, okay, how do I make these things palatable? And that's what I'm trying to do every single day. I wish I had more, like outside of like some of the stuff you saw with like the tree bit or like some of the stuff that I post online that I feel like is like more accessible. A lot of the stuff I don't post, which is like a lot like closer to my heart, is like these very difficult topics that I'm trying to make digestible to people. Specifically, the people who are often most offended by it, right? Like that truck flag joke, right? It's like, I'll tell that joke in an all-white military place to like humble their patriotism or like whatever it is or whatever outcome they get from it. Because to me, it doesn't matter if I reach people who are like me. Like if I tell mixed race jokes about, like dudes from Queens, multiracial dudes from Queens are gonna feel what I say. It's how do I get the conservative Republican, rich, older white dude to laugh about my racial experience. That's when the joke is good. That's how it's made palatable. That's how you get people to think without doing it.
That's so good. No, I really resonate and like appreciate that. I think that like similarly for me, it's interesting kind of like walking into a room that very much often does not want to necessarily laugh at like my stuff. They're like, and one way or the other, either they don't want to laugh at it because they're just like, well, I don't really like trans people, or it's like the other way around, which is like they don't want to be offended. They never anything but them to be perceived as an ism, anything but to be perceived as bigoted, whatever. And so the you know, butthole pucker pretty quick, right?
You have a hard
so it's like kind of getting over that hurdle and then trying to be like, okay, well now let me talk about celery, you know, whatever I want to talk about. Like that's definitely a bit of the struggle. And I think that like something I've really enjoyed in that you even referenced is like, yeah, I think that truck joke kind of like the flag joke like really works in some ways as well, because it's not necessarily like, yes, it's like it's immediately humbling, but I find when I'm able to put kind of a can't we agree joyous type spin on something, then it is so much easier to then like we're instinctually like wanting to belong with the group that is laughing at this joke. And it, like that is like such a desirable form of allyship, right? Is to just immediately be like, haha, I get the joke, I'm on the end of the joke, so we're cool now, you know, and like suddenly the whole demeanor shifts, and so you're able to then you know, I don't even want to use the word like persuade, but
create
it's like
camaraderie though.
Create
a small little community of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by like what you do with overcoming that, like on stage all the time, because it's so hard, because there are people in the audience who are like quite literally against your humanity, and your challenge when you open your mouth and you take the microphone is essentially to say, hey, I'm a human too, and that's hard. And when I go to places like Mississippi or whatever, and it's like I'm doing a show there, it's like they don't want to hear about my humanity. And the challenge is through entertainment and through my life experience and through my intellect and my heart is to show them, hey, I know that I'm someone who you might have like, you know, clutched your purse around or whatever it is a moment ago, but like, look at me. I'm a person.
That's so impactful. What, I guess, you know, what advice would you have for like other people that you think are, you know, would kind of have those like struggles in an audience, whether those are, you know, really like kind of obviously implied? I feel like that's like very much the case, and it was very well documented with like kind of the a lot of like the early like Black women humorists that we had of like having to then kind of overcome just like an obvious hurdle that people can see. For me, it doesn't really happen until I open my mouth because I like pass. And so regardless of where that's coming from, I think that there's still that kind of like, dare I say, like marginalization hurdle to try and get over, and that is really difficult for like a lot of comics.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to step outside of your own struggle. You have to know your struggle intimately enough that you can explain it concisely, and you have to be able to step outside your own struggle enough where you could find a common touch point with the audience. Right?
Wow, that's so succinct. That's so good.
Yeah, I don't even know I could say that. That's crazy. It almost sounds like I said that before, but yeah, I mean, that's really when I think about like a lot of my racial humor as being like a multiracial person. That's often, you know, either favored or prejudiced against, depending on what people's perceptions are of me. I have to take that idea that's uniquely my own and make it relatable to the average person in their everyday life, right? Where it's like, you notice someone treats you differently, you're like, oh wait, where are you from again? Right? Or like something like that, right? And I think that that's the challenge, is that, and that's really where the beauty and art is of stand-up comedy, right? It's be able to look inside yourself deeply enough that you could like understand the thing, and then also be able to step outside yourself far enough that you could step into someone else's shoes and imagine how they move through the world and make it relatable and understandable and digestible to them.
That's so beautiful. Like I just want that like as a quote on my wall.
Target.
That was beautiful.
You're gonna come with it?
I want to talk a little bit about like working clean and quote unquote, and it's a kind of topic of much debate of like people being like kind of very much pendulum swing on really serious opinions here. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that working clean in some ways is more challenging but more rewarding when I'm able to make like a joke about a bumper sticker land really hard, that's like so gratifying. I also then struggle with like a lot of my identity is kind of automatically lumped into sexual categories. So even if I'm not talking about even genitals, the fact that it is trans content or that it is coming from a trans person is already then painted as kind of perverse, right?
That's a form of oppression.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because then I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not even saying, like, I say no curse words. I'm not working blue. I'm not even talking about fake dicks, like, but it's like coming from a trans person, and so it's not a clean act, right? Or family friendly, or whatever we want to quote it as. You are incredible when I've seen like your clean content, because it doesn't necessarily like. I can clock sometimes other comics like clean work, quote unquote. I feel like there is some other personality behind it, or that it's a bit boxed in somehow for them.
Yeah, with the clean voice.
Right. When I listen to your content, I don't necessarily like feel that way. I feel the same level of like passion coming through like a holiday and like flag bit as I do kind of something that's a little bit more risque, right? Or like even just kind of edgy, racially charged, anything, So I guess, talk about, if you would mind kind of talking a little bit about like, what's like your thoughts around working clean or working blue, and how do you kind of make that call for yourself as you're writing content?
I mostly work clean, and that's the reason is because I started comedy and I started teaching at the same time, And I never wanted like a parent or a kid to like find a video of me and like see me going like, yeah, slur, 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 sexting, sexting, sexting. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, the real lasting motivation outside of like, an issue of employment is that like, I want my comedy to unite people. I want my comedy to bring people together. I want my comedy to be for young people and for old people. I always think like, would my 15-year-old student in Memphis get this? Or am I catering to like some intellectual audience? Or am I catering towards liberal people? And I don't want to do that. For me, the point of like laughter is that like laughter is best enjoyed together. So I'm always trying to like, if you talk to an old person, a lot of times they don't want to hear about like sex or stuff like that. Or they want to hear about it in such a way that it's so delicate that it could be, a double entendre.
Or almost that it's so goofy that
Yes.
it's lost its
Yeah.
kind of risqueness. That's something
Yeah.
that I try to toe the line of frequently because it paints a lot of my content, right?
Yeah. So for me, it all comes down to the bottom line of reaching people. And I'm going to reach people by being cleaner. And I have no qualms about that. Like that's what I'm here to do.
Man, that's so good. I know you didn't necessarily like say this, but like the piece I pulled out from that is that like clean comedy reaches and unifies larger audiences and larger audience bases.
Yeah.
That's so like well put. That's fantastic. Do you feel like, I think that a lot of comedians really struggle to write clean. Do you feel like it is like kind of a concerted effort, or do you feel like it's just kind of a part of your practice at this point? Do you know what I mean? Like what kind of level of thought are you putting into trying to find content?
Yeah, I think I'm always thinking about making it clean. Like I always say that, but then it's like, it's a combination. So it's like, I've done it for so long that it's kind of like a muscle, but like, yeah, sometimes the bit is just dirty. Sometimes it'll just be dirty, and I'm just like, that's okay. Like I've been doing comedy long enough where I can like accept myself for that, and before like I wouldn't. But I think just thinking about, this is the best advice I can give. Think about the person you want to reach with your comedy. Like think if your 80-year-old grandmother would like it, or like your 16-year-old niece, and think about writing the bit for them. And if you do that, you don't have to worry about writing clean. It'll just come out like clean.
That's so good.
Yeah, imagine that person.
Building from the audience back. That's like so smart. I think that's like in some ways it's like like an obvious simple tip, but it's like I think very undervalued, especially when talking about how to like clean up your act, quote unquote. And that's so interesting. I think that I had a really wonderful experience of trying to like learned that in practice. It was like one of my first times I did a show that was for like it was like a high school like GSA group, so it was like it's like no offense, it's the gay kid club, right? And which
I'm
we love.
offended actually.
We love the gay kid club, right? And I found that Gen Z I was surprised in that their sense of humor was like, they didn't exactly want dark content. They wanted something really silly because like the rest of life is very dark. And I think that all people are that way, but I was surprised that Gen Z was that way because we paint them as being quite cruel and cutting. And additionally playing to not even necessarily their ego, but like acknowledging some of their hardship landed the hardest for me, where I was like, y'all built different. I don't know, like for me, I was like, does this binder make my chest look flat? And for y'all, it's like, does this binder make my chest look flat? And also, how are we going to take down the oil industrial complex? They were like really into that.
And that's a joke that does that inclusion well, that idea of like, hey, we're all laughing at the same thing.
And so it was really fun to think about like, writing for this very particular audience. And I think that I had underestimated truly how like different that like kind of age would affect the punchline of my joke. If like it's
a good writing exercise.
No, that's true. To be like, would I change this punchline if it was for like an old folks home, or if it was for like a college? I think
that's why that's why it's so essential for a comedian to travel, because you have to realize, like, you have to get out of whatever your bubble is.
You travel often. This is something that I've wondered, but I have failed to ask a lot of folks on here, is there a place that you feel like you do really well, and are there places that you're like, woof, you know, they did not love that, and it's not necessarily just that show or that venue, but like consistently you have a hard time reaching a region?
I think I really do well in multiracial cities, because that's like kind of my experience. I'm a multiracial person. I grew up in a multiracial city, and I talk about like often like the camaraderie that builds. Like, you know, we learn to live with each other by joking with each other, is what I say often. And it's true. It's like growing up, we're all doing race jokes with each other, and then we're all still eating together and cracking on each other and doing that type of stuff. And like, that's equality to me. And cities that are very multiracial, like, really get that. And I think that where people, there's two areas that are hard, I think, and they're both like the horseshoe ends of the spectrum. Like, people who don't want to think, like, let's say, people in Florida.
Oh my god, I just like saw the way my voice was on the memo, and it was just like, wah, wah, wah. Holy shit, that's funny.
And then people who think too much, like people in Boulder.
Yeah.
Those audiences are hard because they either don't want to hear the message or they're not ready for it.
Right, and I think that like there's a big interesting place of shame in like both of those environments, which makes it hard to receive that information, whether it's like Boulder being like, oh, it's so shameful to be offensive, it's so shameful to laugh at something that gauche or like this culturally you know, whatever. Like, I think that they get kind of that weird like shame grubbling up their butt, and so then they can't like let loose and enjoy it with you or be with you in like that kind of empathetic silliness. And I think that like, you know, kind of on the other like side is a moreover, right, you know, a lot of like people that I think were in some ways really like wrongfully like neglected in having exposure to like other ideas, other cultures, other like kind of educational materials, other like points of view, etc. I think that like those folks can also have odd shame in it about like either like not understanding or feeling like that shame on someone else's behalf that they're not acting appropriately for a context, and it makes it really difficult for them to then absorb that other content too. It's something that like I see a lot of like shame working through people when I go through my stuff, because I'll talk a lot about microaggressions, and I try to not call people out ever for like saying something. I try to just get them on my side to be like, isn't this crazy when it happens? Isn't this just ridiculous when someone's like, you look just like a real boy, you know? Like, and they can suddenly laugh at it a little easier because it's not, ooh, I did that. They're like, haha, that is ridiculous, never doing that again, you know? Like, it's a little bit easier.
And that's what you want.
Yeah. So no, I think that that's like such a like apt advice. One thing I wanted to talk about before we kind of go into the last little segment of the pod here is something you brought up at the beginning, which is like, you know, kind of coming into your 30s, not to date you, but having gone through so many political shifts of seeing a lot of different types of people vilified, and what has that affected your comedy? And yeah, like just kind of like talking about like, you know, coming up as a class clown and then getting into comedy, like I'd say, you know, like in some ways a little bit earlier than a lot of other folks, and taking those perspectives with you.
Yeah, I think that perspective kind of gives me the understanding that the powers that be are always trying to divide us, and that I view like my role as a comedian is to like bring people together through humanity. I think eating together, right? Like sitting at the table and eating together brings people together. Dancing together, right? Anyone gets on the dance floor at a wedding, young, old, and laughing together, like those are like, I think like humanity's like three really big superpowers that can like overcome prejudice. It's like, man, I might hate Mexicans, but this quesadilla is delightful, right?
Breaking bread.
Yeah, literally,
right.
right? So it's like those things, they're always trying to divide us, and I've seen that happen, and it will always happen. And I view it as like a goal of mine is to try to bring people together by thinking about and laughing about these differences.
Sharing food, laughter, and movement. That's so beautiful. This is purely for, like, on a selfish note. Do you have any books that you would recommend?
Oh my god, yeah.
I'm a big, I'm like a big book nerd, and so like would love.
What kind of books are you into?
I am
Or tell me
admitting this
some of
on
your
air.
favorites.
It's I am a big like self-help person. I also really enjoy like psychology books. That's what my graduate studies were in.
Oh, sick.
And I feel like that's also really helpful for comedy, like 'cause it's kind of understanding the way a mind might absorb or receive information more easily. But I love just kind of like comedy writing books, even like ones that are for beginners, because I feel like I always find a little nugget of wisdom. So like whether it's, you know, kind of like a here's how you write this thing, or it's like this is a story of my life as a comedian, or like whatever. Do you have any comedy books that you would recommend on the pod?
I think my favorite comedy book that I've ever read is Dissecting a Dead Frog.
It's on my list.
And it's just a series of interviews. It's almost like a podcast. But I think what makes it so good is that the questions are like really purposeful, and like because it's written, it allows you to like pour over each of these people who like talk about that you admire, and you watch these, you know, these Amy Poehlers, or these like just everyone like tell their own stories about bombing and like growing and like finding their purpose, or how they overcome imposter syndrome. So that's probably like my favorite comedy book. That's like not about like technical comedy. In terms of like just things that I've read that I'm like passionate about, I started reading more poetry. And I find like a lot of like, if it like really helps me a lot with like language.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes a poem or a poet will like phrase something so perfectly, where you're like, oh shit, like I could do something like that.
It's like wordsmithing, which is the same thing as comedy. It's just for a different kind of aim.
Yes. And for that, I recommend Poetry Unbound.
A good one.
You know, Patrick Otuama, if I'm pronouncing that right, and it's basically like 50 poems, and it's like a paragraph introduction, if that, the poem, and then an explanation of the poem. And I always like things that like make me feel smart. Like I want the audience to feel smart, and this author makes me feel smart. So he like explains the poem to you, and you're like, oh my god, yeah, I get it. I'm smart too.
That's wonderful.
I'll just try to give you like maybe one or two more
You got
like
your
wide
Goodreads
stuff.
up right now? Hell yeah.
This is my
I'm a
Goodreads
friend
app.
you on Goodreads.
Let's go. I got into a lot of Russian authors in the past couple of years, so I've been heavy into Russian literature. Same thing I'd recommend, Swim in the Pond in the Rain. People say, like, Russian literature, like, you know, like, people think of, like, Italians for food, or Parisian, like, French for baking, or, you know, the Dutch for artists.
Man, Russians sure know how to lament.
Yo. Russian literature is literature at full proof. That's it.
Oh, that's...
Read that. Like,
It's like a heavy... That's like a Rolling Stone review.
Yeah. If you hit that shit, you'll do it, and you'll be like, ooh, that's it. So I'd recommend A Swim in the Pond in the Rain for that.
Love that.
And then maybe if you wanted to like a non-fiction biography, Malcolm X's is always my favorite. And if you just want to like think about like self-help kind of stuff, I also read a bunch of that, though I'm a little bit more selective with it. Have you done about The Artist's Way?
Oh, yeah. Big Julia Cameron, yeah, big Daily Pages guy.
Yes.
It is very much part of my practice.
I highly recommend, let me go, I wish I could go, I know there's a way to do, Be Water, My Friend. Are you a fan of Bruce Lee at all? Maybe that might not be for you, but it's Bruce Lee's daughter talking about, like, kind of like unearthing and
That's so cool.
dispelling his teachings. And I'm going to say one last one.
Bring it. No, this is amazing.
Let's see. I'm going to try to do a little bit of everything. This is it. This is the one. I'm glad I saved it.
Best for last.
Letters to a Young Poet by Rainier Marie Rilke. And you could easily, this is the number one book I would recommend to every single creative person, even over Julia Cameron's Artist's Way. It's a short book about a young poet trying to get advice from a prominent poet, who at this time in Austria is Rilke. And you could easily read this book and replace the word poet with comedian. And everything is just as true and just as valuable. And it's so beautiful. And this is one where I'd be like, have you read it?
I have not, no.
This is one where I'd be like, hey, like stop what you're doing and read this book.
Great, cool. On the list. I've been trying to like crank through like a book a week this year, and I've gotten through like 30 plus books, which has been cool. Yeah, thank you. And like, so it's like fun to kind of get actual recommends that aren't just like the algorithm thinks that you'll like. So all of those are wonderful. I guess before we kind of move into like a little joke workshop, last real thing is like, would love to hear you talk about kind of your process with the Comedians Talk Art.
Yeah.
I think that that's just such a cool project, and
Thank you.
I've loved reading kind of like some of the stuff that you've like written about it. Love watching the videos. I think that they're like funny, informative, and cute.
Thank you.
And like, yeah. So what was that process of like being like, oh, I have this idea, and this is like, well,
Yeah.
you know, like what's that?
So it was basically born out this idea where I was, I was a high school teacher, and then I became a full-time comedian, and I was like, well, I have to come out with content, and I didn't want to just come out with like baseless content, and I knew I wanted to make people think, and I knew I wanted to make people feel included. I'm thinking about my values, right? And I grew up thinking art wasn't for people like me. I thought it was like, for some rich person with a monocle and a fancy art degree or whatever. And then I became a teacher, and I noticed that my students didn't like art either. And it was like seeing little me's go, oh no, I don't fuck with art, like, you know what I mean? But really, art is for everyone. It's like, it's in our experience to be human and to appreciate something visually and to be moved by it. And I knew I wanted to create that feeling. So I came up with this idea, like what better way to undercut the power and the power and snobbery that the art world often holds over people that makes them think art isn't for them, by using humor. By showing that art is approachable, by showing that you could go into the museum and laugh and joke with your friends, and that your ideas and your interpretations are just as valid as someone who has some crazy PhD, and that you can enjoy it in the way that you're meant to. So that's where Comedians Talk Art was born, and I'm still iterating on it, and I'm still growing it, and I'm still trying to get it into as many museums and institutions as possible to show them and the people around them, like, hey, the museum's for you. It's not just for old people who have nothing to do during the day. Like, it's for you too. And you should come in there and you should look at stuff and you should engage in your humanity by engaging in someone else's humanity on the wall.
That's so good. I feel like that's such a class act example of like direct action and creating space at the table.
I don't even know what that means.
Like, just like in like the idea of like, oh, there's no seats at this table kind of energy, or like this isn't a thing that's for me, or this isn't a space that's like made for me. And so just being able to be like, oh no, we're like putting it into practice that like this is the message, this is how we're getting it across, this is the medium through which we're gonna do that, and like just making that happen. Like that's like, yeah, kudos. That's so cool.
That's fucking
Do you have a joke that you want to try on the show?
I just wrote this. I just wrote this a couple days ago, and I haven't even said it at a mic yet.
Freshie.
Yeah, right. So this is fun for me, and you could kind of see, people could like see my voice, or you could see like some of my voice. So, so what's interesting to me is that white supremacists believe in racial justice too. Like they want more white representation and more representation of white people. And I say we give it to them. And I say we give it to them in the same way that we got it. Jafar from Aladdin, he's gonna be Jeff from Aladdin. You got him. Aladdin from Aladdin, the street thief Al, you mean? Come on, you got him. Yolanda, the lady who killed Selena, she's white now. Remember the Cosby Show? We're doing an all-white reboot. Bill Cosby's going to be played by Epstein.
No, like a double grown joke.
We're making P. Diddy white. No baby oil. Of course, he doesn't use lotion. Just dry, white Diddy. You got him. Jake from State Farm, we're making him white again. Y'all can have him. We didn't want him anyway.
Oh my god.
Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat, instead of stealing souls, he's stealing property. He's white. R. Kelly and Michael Jackson, we're gonna keep them. We're gonna keep them. We got it.
That's so good. That's already so fun. Where do you feel like when you're reading that through and you're like, well, this is just like a brand, like this is like a sketch new bit, right? Super freshy. Do you feel like there are weak points in that, or do you feel like there are ambiguous points, and what are they?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8 punches.
Yeah, 8. And I don't know if the audience will need all of them. So it's just going to be a matter of doing them, seeing how the audience takes them, and which ones I like saying the most. I love saying dry white ditty. That's one of my
That's
favorite.
a really fun. It's like almost alliterative, but in a crunchy way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's really fun.
So I like
man.
those, and then just I'm always concerned with clarity of thought, like just making sure that like, and this is a good question to ask you, is like from the moment I said the idea, did it make sense and was it clear? Like, did you know what I was going for immediately?
Interesting. Like, I think that it's a really fun, like, kind of left turn. It's a really fun kind of switch. I think that there's like a couple things that, like, if I had like written out this joke, right, that I would question myself on. This doesn't necessarily match your style of humor either. So, like, obviously, like, feel free to throw this in the trash. It's not necessarily even advice, but like, when I say something kind of controversial, or even say like a word in its almost like it's like my scientific name, if I say transgender, people like clinch, even people that are with me on the joke. And so similarly with like the term white supremacist, I think that could go either way and be almost like it's almost got a shock value that like is kind of reserved for like slurs and cuss words, because we're like, okay, we're getting heavy, you know, but then it's very much not a heavy joke, which is really fun. It's quite light and playful. And so I'm like, there's two ways where I'm like, wow, that could either like benefit you and being kind of like a bit of a grip, you know, it's a good hook. But then for me, my concern, if I wrote it for me, is like, oh, there's going to be a clinch that then I have to really get over with that first punch. And so is it worth brainstorming other ways to say white supremacist, or do we just want to say it? You know what I mean?
What would
like,
you
kind
replace it with?
I don't know, but I think that like being able to either there's a part of me that would maybe be like, could I personify that in a different way and be like, instead of just saying like bigots, I could say something that's like regional that people would see as bigoted. You know what I mean? Like having that kind of concept, or being like, but I think that it's fun and clinchy, so I would run it straight first, and then if it feels too butt puckery, to then try to come up with some silly substitutes. And I thought the Jafar to Jeff was such a great like open punch. And yeah, so for me, the ones that really hit in that were like Jafar to Jeff, Crosby and Diddy. Another thought on that was like kind of the order of that, because I think right now with Diddy being current, that's gonna make better as you're like, as like being like, you go through Crosby, which is known, and then Diddy, which is relevant and hot right now. But as that ages, putting Diddy before Crosby, because Crosby is more of an ageless like he's a conflict.
He's a
for
classic.
Us.
Cosby's a classic villain.
Right. And then lastly, like, oh man, the Jake from State Farm was really, that's like so funny to me. I think that's gonna be so funny, and having that as kind of your final big punch with like MJ R. Kelly, like, we'll keep him. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's like kind of your, not even like backup punch, but like as like the after tag, you know. That just feels like super relatable. Like, those are the pieces that really stuck out to me. But yeah, once again, I mean, like, you know, I don't know what's funny the audience is gonna know. So like, there's probably some other really like great bits in there that are that way. Give them what they want. I feel like.
So it's.
Can you read me the
So I just reworded it while we were talking. White supremacists believe in racial representation too, because they want more representation for white people, and I say we give it to them. But I say we give it to them in the same way that we got it.
Can I read it?
Yeah. And it's still, I mean, obviously I've said it like once, so it still needs a little, it's got some clunkiness in it.
It's interesting. I see the point that you're raising. If I was trying to like eliminate from this to make it like punchier, I think that I would then be like, just like white supremacists want, like, they want racial representation too. And I say we give it to them because, like, to me that's like, because that's like the thing. I think that there is something different between like, we believe in this too, and therefore we want it also for ourselves. That's like definitely a real point, but I think that that is still then implied by just saying in one sentence, white supremacists want racial representation too. They do. So let's give it to them. Y'all can have Jafar, you know what I mean? Whatever. Like, kind of then going through. I think that that's like a easy way to shorten. And I say we give it to them the same way we got it. Jafar from Aladdin's Jeff. Aladdin from that's Al. Interesting. Jafar from Aladdin is going to get, in some ways, I think, a bigger laugh because he's villainous and silly.
Yes,
Aladdin is almost like a character we want to be, so it's not necessarily like...
Yeah, these characters, I always get this, they need to be irredeemable.
Right, and so it makes it easier to laugh at them and also their silly substitutes. And also I think it's funny because it shows moreover that like your Aladdin is like complicated as like a as a character with race, you know what I mean, whatever I guess. But Jafar almost even more so because we've like queer coded him and he's like darker and like, you know what I mean. And so there's like kind of an additional element of like, now you get to be the bad guy, right? You get that representation.
Who's your
right?
favorite, least favorite of them? And you could scroll.
Just one. Dry white ditty is so funny. Cosby's so good. The Epstein's gonna get a groan. I haven't heard a single Epstein joke that hasn't gotten a groan in the last like 6 months. And Jake from State Farm are easily my most favorite. I think that like R. Kelly and Michael were keeping them is a fun because it's slightly different from the rest of like you're like you can have this, you can have this, you can have this one will keep. You know what I mean? So it gives you like you can have then the 3 punches of you have this, and then this one will keep gets to be kind of that extra 4th punch that like is like fun, kind of then can lead to something. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's a fun ellipses almost of it. Those are definitely my faves. Yeah. That's so fun. Jafar is Jeff. Oh my god. Not Jeff.
Jeff.
I'm gonna be laughing about that all day. It's amazing.
That and Dry White Ditty are the keepers.
Dry White Ditty, man. And that's such a fun one to punctuate, like, because it's like got that it's like it's a thing. I'm a big thespian. It's a big thing in Shakespeare is like kind of the monosyllabic nature is cueing the actor to slow down and punctuate those points. And so when I have like something like that where I'm like cold, you know, like whatever,
say
like,
it
really,
again, but
like
with Ditty.
where it's like dry white ditty is like like that's such a punch, fam. Like that's so fun. That's so fun. Oh my god. That's so excellent. It's interesting. I think that like the Cosby line in some ways is going to be a little controversial. I would keep in a punch at Cosby, and like if Epstein is matching that energy, then I would like keep it. I feel like having 2 grown references, if that grown-y references, is just an uphill battle whenever I try to do it. You might be able to pull it off, you know what I mean? And so like run it, you know what I mean? But like that, I would foresee that getting in the way of Crosby actually being more funny with almost a more ridiculous comparison instead of one that was more like him. We're replacing Crosby with, you know, one of the Wiggles, right? Pardon Crosby. Replacing Cosby with like one of the Wiggles, you know, the weird looking one, or the hot one. That's funny because it's just so left. It's like extra left field, but then somehow still child related that it would get like a different react.
I think you're right. There is something on that.
But I don't know. Once again, it's like I would run it both. I would run it both ways because it might give you like Cosby and Epstein's groan factor, their edge, that edge might cancel each other out, and it might make the joke true. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? In a good way, that it's like absorbable. If it's not, then I would just like goof it the fuck up because it's still really funny and I would keep going.
Yeah, so you're gonna see me try this at a mic pretty soon.
Yeehaw!
I'm gonna do all 8 of these.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do is write like 5 to 10 punches and then pick my top like 2 to 3 and like crank that joke that way. That's so good. Man, this has been so much. Thank you so much for coming on the pod.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Please plug whatever you got coming up. What's exciting for you? What's happening in your world?
I need people to go on my profile and press the follow button.
God, that salute. Yeah, that is the ever.
I need you
struggle.
to. People go to my profile, they like all my stuff, and they leave. And I need you to go on my profile. And I don't even care what you like at this point.
The grid is so well curated, but the follow button needs the most attention.
Just press the follow button.
So
At Bad Boy Anzer. I don't do it on YouTube, do it on TikTok, do it on Instagram. No, I hope TikTok gets banned. I don't have to do that. But follow me on the things. You could see Comedians Talk Art, which is where I take comedians to art museums. You could see my stand-up clips. You could see all types of sometimes shirtless pictures of me.
Wow. Oh my
But
God.
I mean,
I
just
wish, man. I wish. You posted a photo that was just very well shot of you in like a lounge chair, and all of the Denver comedy scene was just like thirst trapping, like salivating over the photo. We were like, "Daddy, Sammy," like.
But yeah, just keep up with me, and I'm touring a ton, so I don't know where people might be listening to this from, but chances are I'm coming towards you.
Fantastic. I will post all of the things in the links and the whatnot that's beneath this audio player, hopefully. And thank you so much for coming on the pod.
What a pleasure.
Is there any final words, any last little bits of advice that you would give to new comics or just kind of a younger version of you?
I've always, whenever younger comics ask me, or like younger versions of me, I would always wish that I knew that when you start any creative pursuit, what you want is not actually what you get. And the best thing that you end up getting usually is failure. And constant and persistent failure is what gives you everything you're looking for. Let go of trying to be good and embrace the failure, because through that you'll discover the craft and you'll discover yourself.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. This was so great. Y'all please follow Sammy on all the things, and hope to have you back on the pod one day. And until next time, dearest Punchkins, bye.